At the time of publishing this video, Cedar Point opening day is 8 days away for the 2023 season, so you may be wondering, how can you already have tips and tricks out if there is a whole new section of the park? Well, the only real impact that this section has on the park this year is the updated early entrance policies, and since I've been visiting the park for 7 years this year, I know all of the tips and tricks that you need for the best day possible. In addition to giving you a plan for how to ride every coaster in the park without a fast lane in one day, I will also put my predicted time so you know exactly how long you'll be in certain areas of the park. Here are my Cedar Point tips and tricks for everything in the park, from food to riding the best coasters in the world. So before we go over the optimized schedule that should give the best experience at America's Rock and Roller Coaster, we're going to dissect any tips that you may need before entering the park. First of all, buy your tickets online. Tickets online, especially if you're buying them now, should have specific sales that can save you a lot of money. Right now, the price for admission online is around $50. This does not include parking or food, but it's still a lot cheaper than the at-gate price. Parking at Cedar Point is an extra $20. For this reason, I recommend buying the Fun Day Bundle. For about $20 extra, so $70, you get included admission, free parking, and also all-day dining. Dining at amusement parks, especially for larger families, is where the parks sneakily make their money. Getting this bundle eliminates the extra food costs, and you can eat wherever you please, which is useful at Cedar Point. Also, if you can choose a day and you are not on a time crunch traveling, pick a weekday, the best being Tuesday and Wednesday. The schedule I will give works 95% on weekdays, while on Saturdays and sometimes Sundays, it doesn't work as well. However, if you want to ride more than just the coasters and don't want to be on a time crunch that the schedule provides, consider buying the fast lane. Trust me, it is worth it if you only have one day and want more than one ride on each coaster. Anyways, now that we have the cost covered, now we can finally arrive at the park. Cedar Point for hotel guests and pass holders has a 1 hour early entry starting at 9 a.m. This year, early entry is not as useful, but still, if it's available, don't miss the opportunity. You want to arrive at the gate about 30 minutes before you enter. For early entry guests, arrive at 8:30 so you have time to park and get all of your admissions situated. For regular guests, arrive at 9:30, and unless the policy for this year has changed, you should be able to enter the park and set up a good spot to wait for opening. Planning is key at Cedar Point. Now let's get into the stuff we need to worry about in the park. Just remember, this optimized schedule is for people with one day. If you have more than one day at the park, don't worry about rushing. You'll have over 12 hours to experience what the park has to offer. Also, don't feel pressured into following this exact blueprint. This is what I would use if I have one day and wanted to get every credit. But you can veer off the path and experience flat rides, as Cedar Point has lots of other experiences, like Snake River Expedition and the Barnyard. You're in the park. Where should you head first? Now remember, there is early entry and regular entry, so I'll be starting with early entry. If you do not have early entry available, ignore this first hour. You'll still be able to ride Wild Mouse and Gatekeeper. Something nice about the early entry at Cedar Point is that it isn't just this section that is open unless the policy changed. You can set up camp somewhere else in the park for opening, so we will use that to our advantage. Head straight for Wild Mouse at opening. Wild Mouse is the newest coaster with the lowest capacity and is right by 2 different park entrances. More on the entrances later in the video. Getting Wild Mouse out of the way early will eliminate one of the longest lines in the park. For regular guests, we'll hit Wild Mouse later in the day when the line dies down near the front. Lines at Cedar Point hit the peak in the front of the park around noon and peak in the back around 5. The middle lines like Iron Dragon, Millennium Force, and Magnum are usually always long. After Wild Mouse, head straight across the midway to enjoy Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper has an insane capacity, so lines should not be an issue for any time of day. If you get the right wing, take the back seats, and if you get the left wing, take the front seats. These are the best seats on Gatekeeper. Afterward, take the leftover time to enjoy any of the flat rides open in the area, and also set up for the grand opening. Once 10 o'clock hits, early entry guests and regular guests should head to the same ride. You may be tempted to head to Steel Vengeance first, however, this would be a big mistake. Steel Vengeance never opens on time, as Cedar Point has a lack of carpenters to manage the wooden structure. Steel Vengeance almost always opens around 10:45 to 11ish. Instead, we want to head to Millennium Force. Millennium Force is a fantastic ride, and if you briskly walk there at opening, you should only be queuing for 5 to 10 minutes max. For Millennium Force, if the line isn't too long, take the front row. However, lines for the front can reach very far, so you can take the back row as well for a decent ride experience. The middle rows of Millennium Force aren't the best. After Millennium Force, now we'll head to Steel Vengeance. Steel Vengeance by this time should be at least testing. If you're on a lucky day, it may already be open. By the time you get to Steel Vengeance, it should either have just opened and will be a 15-minute wait, or if it was already open, it'll be about 30 minutes. While that may seem like a time waste, compared to the 2-hour waits Vengeance gets later in the day, it's worth it. After this, we got the two biggest coasters in the park out of the way. Cedar Creek Mine Ride and Gemini both always open at 11 o'clock. By this time, these rides should be open, so you can quickly hop on both of these, as they are very close to each other and not extremely popular rides. Of course, you can skip any coaster you want, as riding Cedar Creek Mine Ride may not be the best decision for those who don't like rough rides. On Mine Ride, take the front cars, and on Gemini, take the back cars. You should only wait a maximum of 15 minutes for each. Right after Gemini, don't continue on the trek to the front of the park. This is when you should eat lunch. Everyone talks about how eating a super early lunch or late lunch is vital. I don't think that's true, and it just makes for a weird eating schedule. At this point, you're already in the back of the park. This is where the farmhouse is, but more on that later. And because you're in the back of the park, lines for food shouldn't be horrible. After eating in the many restaurants around the area, now we will start heading up as the general public trickles down. Magnum is the next coaster on our journey, which never has a long line. You'll be waiting 10 minutes max. For the most aggressive experience, take the third row, and for the best experience, take the very back. Now, Cedar Point is on a peninsula, so you don't want to miss out on the beach. Instead of taking a walk up past Corkscrew and the sad dragster plot walking against the crowds, take the peaceful boardwalk underneath Magnum. This leads you right to the front of the park near Windseeker. Something useful at Cedar Point is the different entrances. You'll rarely use the Marina Gate, but the main gate, Magnum Gate, and rarely the Windseeker Gate are nice entrances to travel faster to certain areas of the park. After entering the park, now we'll hit our longest wait time of the day. Unfortunately, there is no way around this wait, as Raptor is at the very front of the park. The maximum wait should be about 45 minutes. If it's longer than that, hit it up later. An easy way to tell if it'll be a 45-minute wait is if the switchbacks on the far end are full. If the line switches back to the switchbacks underneath the main brake run, it's a bit too long. After we ride Raptor, we'll head just across the path to Blue Streak. Blue Streak, being an old family coaster, doesn't get too long of waits. The operations aren't great, but you should only be waiting a maximum of 20 minutes for this classic Woody. The best seat is the second row. Afterward, head over to Valraven. Now that most of the crowds are nearing the back half of the park, Valraven should be at the shortest wait of the day. The maximum wait again should be around 30 to 35 minutes. Valraven is usually always under the predicted wait time, as the line moves very fast. Also, the line always looks a lot longer than it actually is because the capacity is pretty good. The best seat, believe it or not, is the back row, but if you want a scarier experience for your one ride, choose the front. We now only have 4 coasters left for early entry guests, all of which are in the middle of the park. For regular guests, we have 6 coasters left. This is when I would head to Iron Dragon and Rougarou. These coasters are right next to each other, and Iron Dragon will never have over a 30-minute wait. 30 minutes on Iron Dragon is when the queue is spilling out of the entrance because there are no switchbacks in the queue. You'll probably be waiting 25 minutes for Iron Dragon just because of the location and the ride experience geared towards the families. Afterward, you should head to Rougarou and wait 20 minutes there. Rougarou is a hidden gem at Cedar Point, but you definitely want to ride the front row. It's not very popular, hence the reason the line is so short. After Rougarou, it should only be about 4:30, so this is when you should walk across to Corkscrew. After a 10-minute walk, Corkscrew is one of the only coasters I would recommend skipping, but if you want the credit, the line should only be about 15 minutes. Definitely pick the front row or take the second to back for the smoothest ride. Now that it's around 5 o'clock, you can spend time on dinner. We'll get to food in a minute, but the food at Cedar Point is great in general. Just avoid stockade refreshments and coasters dine-in and you'll be fine. Take at least an hour for dinner. This gives you time to chill a little bit and also take in some area of the parks and eat some decent food. Also consider sitting in the Grand Pavilion to watch the crowds and overlook Lake Erie. After your dinner, this is when we'll finish off the boardwalk area for regular guests. If you add an early entry, you can really do whatever you want until we reach Maverick. First, hit up Gatekeeper as the front starts clearing out. You should only be waiting about 30 minutes for Gatekeeper, as later in the day, operations get better and better, and the front gets less crowded. Again, take the left wing, front, or right wing back. After Gatekeeper, head across the area to Wild Mouse. Wild Mouse probably won't be the most accurate prediction, but you should head there right after Gatekeeper. I will predict that it will only take about 30 minutes to get through that line. After you experience the newest coaster in the park, head down to the final coaster and the best night ride in the park. Yes, Maverick being last was on purpose for hopefully the shortest line and also the best night experience. Reach Maverick at around 8:15. The wait will probably be 45 minutes at the shortest and an hour 15 at the longest. Trust me, Maverick is worth this long wait. I like the front more, but I know most guests will enjoy the most aggressive backseat on Maverick. For the last 45 minutes the park is open, or more if the park wasn't as busy, take this time to enjoy the park at night. Walk up Gemini Midway and hit up any of the great night rides. Steel Vengeance, Raptor, and Millennium Force are, in my opinion, the best night rides in the park besides Maverick, as they all go significantly faster. Gemini Midway and the main Midway also look great at night. Congratulations, you just rode all Cedar Point coasters in 12 hours. Now there is still a lot more in the park, so let's get into that really quick. Cedar Point is full of incredible shops and food places. Let's start with shops. In my opinion, the best shop for coaster merch in the park is Pagoda Celebration Central, located right next to Sweet Spot. Pagoda is full of coaster merch and models. For a larger park merch store, head right next to the front gate for Point Plaza. As for food, Cedar Point has really been stepping up its game. My favorite restaurant is the Farmhouse. This has grilled chicken, steak, and potatoes, and is a great restaurant. However, if backyard-style food isn't your thing, try out Hugo's Italian next to Raptor, the best pizza restaurant in the park, or Backbeat Q over by Magnum for some sweet barbecue. Also, there are a couple of sit-down restaurants at the park. My favorite is Chicky and Pete's by Blue Streak. Finally, the last notable restaurant is the brand new Grand Pavilion. While this is more snack-style food, this is a perfect place to chill over the water. Also, for the adults in the groups, while the kids run free in the park, they can grab a few drinks and chill over the lake overlooking the crowds. Finally, any extra tips and tricks. A tip that I use a lot is to not listen to the posted wait times. Usually, lines will be about 3/4 of the estimated wait time. For example, if Maverick is estimated to be an hour, the line will probably be around 45 minutes. Also, don't be afraid to use the other entrances in the park, as they can come in handy to avoid crowds on the midways. Finally, let's talk about some off-topic tips. If you're walking down to Frontier Town, always use Frontier Trail. It's much more shaded and has a lot fewer people compared to Gemini Midway, and it's a bit of a shorter walk. Also, the best bathrooms in the park are located on Frontier Trail, or if you don't mind walking a little bit outside the park, the best bathrooms by far are by the Magnum entrance and Hotel Breakers. Whatever you do, do not use the restrooms by the arcade or the ones across from Maverick. Those are by far the worst in the park. If you are staying in Hotel Breakers, try booking a room over by Cedar Point Shores on the ground level. These allow you to walk right into the park from the balcony of the rooms. If you don't like people walking by, book a room nearby so the entrance to the park is very close. Hotel Breakers is a fantastic stay, especially at night, so don't be afraid to splurge a little at this resort destination. Also, if you are spending the night, definitely check out Cedar Point nights before the beach closes at midnight. This has light shows, giant Jenga, cornhole, and a ton of other outdoor games to enjoy. And that wraps up all the tips I have. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment any tips that you have for Cedar Point and have a great rest of your day.